My name is Elena Zavelev, and I'm a co-founder and CEO of Kadaf, which is a crypto and digital art fair, and Digital Art Month, which is an augmented reality and video public art festival.
Very cool. So you are an advocate of new media, art, adoption. You're all over the globe talking about these things. Can you talk a little bit about your latest work? What's on your mind? What's your focus been of late?
The latest project that I've been working on has been the art fair that we just hosted in New York. It's just over. It's been an amazing art fair. We had over 150 artists participating. The fair has been supported by Tezos. We've had a lot of artists on Tezos there as well. It's been an amazing experience with a lot of visitors, a lot of excitement about digital art, conversations, education.
So what is the audience like? What's the spread? Are we talking like a ton of, traditional art people coming that are curious? Is it people that are more embedded in the digital landscape? Who's coming to these events, and what has the reception been like on both sides?
So my background is in a more traditional art world. I joined the more digital art space around 2017. Therefore, the audience that comes to the events that we produce is kind of a mix. So it's a mix of traditional and, Web3 crowd. And, both usually require some education and a lot of kind of introductions. So the more traditional crowd is just interested what it is, how it can be displayed at home, how it can be collected, is there a future for it, how market influence it. So a lot of questions like that. And for the Web3 crowd, they are more open to the digital art, of course, but they really want to see, I feel like, digital art rather than not art, and they're coming to our events specifically to see the quality pieces, the pieces where the artist makes a lot of effort to create something very special rather than just something commercial.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like this conversation is always had around like, well, how do you display it? Who owns it? How much is it worth? So can you talk a little bit about some of the interesting conversations you've had with artists about methodology and the way that they bring their generative or just digital art to life?
Yeah, so I think that in general, I feel like artists really want to display their digital art in a physical setting. And that's what we've been doing since the beginning. The aim was to show that the digital pieces can be viewed not only on the screen of the computer or even like a TV screen or a phone, but rather that it can be shown in a full scale, in a physical setting. And I feel like that's one of the most exciting things for the artists. For a lot of them, when we show art at Kadaf, it's the first time when they see their art pieces in such a big scale. At every fair, we have some sort of immersive video art experience where we put in a few projections and we dedicate a special room where people can sit and meditate and just enjoy the pieces. And it's usually a very large-scale works. And for specific pieces, it works beautifully. And it's really very special.
Yeah, it's irresistible to see stuff at scale. I'm like printing everything as big as I can. I want the projectors to be bigger. I'm with you on that. So going back to like speaking to the traditional art crowd, what are the barriers facing adoption in your mind?
So I think that just historically when NFTs came to the market, there was so much attention on the technology that, people kind of have this feeling that in order to own digital art, to own NFT, they have to know some sort of very technical things that they don't necessarily do, and they feel a little intimidated by that. So I feel like our goal, in essence, is to explain that it's really not about technology, it's about art. It's about the emerging and living artists that produce outstanding, brilliant, very innovative works, and the collectors as the audience have a unique chance to interact with these artists and to collect these beautiful pieces today. And they don't have to have a technical background or be in IT in order to understand it, to collect it, and to enjoy it. So I feel like that's one of the barriers.
Yeah, so what are, if you're talking to somebody who's new to this world, or you're just trying to sell somebody on the idea that digital art is something they should pay attention to, what do you think digital art unlocks for people? What is having a wallet or participating in this world, like what is unlocked? Is it fun? Is it just a new medium to like look at art and talk about art? What's your pitch for that when you're talking to people, especially in the traditional art world?
So I always pay the most attention to art. We show a lot of art, so it's really not complicated. When they go into the fair, the first thing that they see are the art pieces. So when they see the art pieces, really they don't speak about, they don't ask a lot of questions about technology right away. They rather enjoy their experience. They go into immersive room. We also have a lot of panels and educational talks. So I see that, they specifically come for these panels and talks to listen about things. And then, we have QR codes that people can scan, and those go to the marketplaces and they can purchase, and there pretty much the questions start. So kind of this barrier doesn't happen at once. It just happens already on the way when they're ready to buy or to collect. And I feel like that's the right thing to do, is to stress, to pinpoint the art as the first focal point, and then, go into everything else.
Yeah. I feel like your attitude, which is so really resonating with me, is like you just have a yes and approach. You're like, yes, I come from the traditional art world. Yes, I love traditional art. And this is a really cool space to be in.
Absolutely.
This conversation is like always about like the tension point, like, everything's at odds, like, how do we pitch digital art? How do we pitch generative art? Do you think that there is actually truth to the tension? Like, is that a real thing? Or do we just hype it up as a drama subhead at Art Basel?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I am just living and breathing digital art. So for me, this tension really doesn't exist. Although, as I teach at Christie's Education, Sotheby's Institute, and I go to the auction house and I see that it's not there yet as much as I would like it to be. But on the other hand, the auction houses are now in the digital art space as well. So it's all changing. I don't know. I think that we're on our good way.
Yeah. No, I think I've been kind of surprised in a good way by just the reception and like the willingness to have a conversation, because there's so much to unpack. Mm-hmm. So shifting gears to the artist, what do you think is like, what tool or unlock is happening for artists that maybe want to enter this space or in this space? Like, what are artists really talking about? What's their conversation like with you?
A lot of artists are fascinated by artificial intelligence, and they love using AI in their work, and generative art is very dear to the collectors and to the audience. It's visually very interesting, so I definitely think that's one of the areas of an interest. I also really like augmented reality and cross reality. I feel like it's a very, very interesting medium. There are a lot of artists who are working in a more traditional world, and then they're bringing the AR works as kind of continuation of their physical works, which I think is great. So there are a lot of tools available right now. I would be curious seeing more experimentation actually on blockchain. I feel like in the early days of blockchain, that has been pretty popular because the technology was so new to the artists, and they wanted to experiment. They wanted to, conceptually interpret it. And right now, I don't see it that much, so I'd be curious to see more of that.
So you mean, I guess like thinking of the blockchain landscape, it's like, okay, you can turn it into an NFT. Like you can prove provenance, you can prove like the record, what's been sold, bought, traded, whatever. What else can the blockchain unlock for artists?
You can also look at it conceptually. Like I'm thinking Kevin Abosh and his I'm a Coin project that has been a very early project, and as a conceptual artist, Kevin has experimented with the medium. So projects like that, I'd love to see more.
Yeah. Can you describe that project a little bit for people who don't know?
Yes. So I hope I'm describing describing it correctly, but Kevin has tokenized a sample of his, or a few samples of his blood, and then he has created pretty much an NFT out of this tokenization, and he has sold it pretty successfully.
Yeah, there's this whole performance component of it. There are all these levers that can be pulled. I think we've only just started to scratch the surface of what that can be. So what do you think when we look at impact? Like, what do you think the impact of platforms like FX Hash, blockchains like Tezos, just this emerging world, what do you think the impact will be on the art world at large?
Also a good question. So, I mean, right now, I think it's a pretty good moment to enter the traditional art space with the blockchain projects because, first of all, people already heard about blockchain. They know what NFTs are in general. So, and also for the art world, the idea of recording provenance securely is a very big idea. So it's something, you know, that the art world has been struggling for, I don't know, centuries, thousands of years. So having a tool available where you can really record the provenance, see the provenance, it's an appealing thought. So I think now is a good moment to really introduce this to the traditional art players. Now, will it be adopted right away? There are also a lot of considerations for that as well. It's a process, but it's a good moment.
Kind of back to you and your work. If you could like wake up tomorrow and do everything that you wanted to in this space, like what would that day be like? What would you be thinking about? What would you be working on? What's making you the most excited right now about this world?
I would love to produce more digital art events. So right now we are producing them on a not such a huge scale. It's a smaller scale, and you know, it depends what is smaller, but not as large as our Basel, for example. So my dream idea is really, that's how we started Kadaf, is to create the art fair for digital art. So I would like to see something maybe not as large as our Basel, but something as big as Untitled, dedicated specifically to digital art. And you know, we do open calls all the time. I see such great quality art that really deserves the platform to be shown. So having something really nicely produced in the form of art fair, but happening in different cities and places, that would be a dream.
Yeah, I actually think, you know, geographically speaking, there is so much untapped potential, like in South America, you know, all over, so much untapped potential for new markets for this. Do you have your eye on any part of the world in particular where you're seeing really interesting stuff come out of?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of conversations now about Dubai. I would be curious in exploring that area and seeing if we can bring digital art event there. And not only the digital art, but also some education, because that's what we, you know, do, and that's what usually brings a lot of people together, is education and art.
Okay, last two questions. Tell me about the art world that you want to be a part of.
It's a great question. You know, I really like the art market in general. I've been working in it for years, and you know, it has its pluses and minuses, but it always has a very strong appeal to me. So I'm actually pleased with the art world that I am in right now. I would love to see more digital art in the physical art world, as I said, but I think it's a great market. It's a very dynamic market with a very strong community, and recently I have noticed that this community is actually open to new things. So if explained properly, I feel like they would open up to digital art a lot. It's just a matter of, you know, bringing the right content, the right education, showing it in an interesting way.
I mean, especially with that key of like putting them in a space that's very comfortable. Like you're in a gallery space, you're seeing things in its physical form in some way. I think that really goes a long way. Okay, so the last question is what we ask everybody, which is, it's okay if you need a minute, but it's blockchain in one word. What is blockchain to you?
For me, blockchain is the means to record provenance. That's what, that's what it's been since the beginning. And maybe because I'm coming from a more traditional art world, that was the most appealing thing to me, that you can really record what has happened, who has collected the work, how much it's been sold for. It's so necessary. It's really, the task that had to be solved, and that's blockchain for me.
And there's something very simple about what blockchain has set out to do and done. And it's like, I think in this conversation especially, and your point of view is like, we've made it really complicated, and it's not.
It's not. It's a database. So it's a secure database. It works great. If it's, if the UX is good, you can really enjoy it in a very simple manner. And I think that's what we need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. We could talk for hours, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.